back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for
keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have you guys here on this Thursday, January 16th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. Makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net. That is gsmcpodcast.net. So, let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So, we're going to start off the show. We're going to talk about which number one seed is more likely to be upset this weekend between the Chiefs and the Lions. We'll start off with that. Second part of the show, we'll get into a potential, I don't want to stir anything up, but I'm going to be doing it anyways by talking about it. If there's a potential for a Mike McCarthy, Aaron Rodgers reunion, if they were to link up and go to the same team in 2025. Now, there's a lot of factors that would go into it, but we'll talk about that if that's a possibility. Then, in the third part of the show, we will talk about how it wasn't a very good year for the highest paid QBs in the league. More specifically, the top five. We'll talk about it, how they fared this past season. Something I wanted to talk about. And I saw CBS actually on their Instagram posted about it as well. So I just wanted to get into that conversation. Then, in the fourth part of the show, we'll talk about the Jets head coach search. They have interviewed a lot of candidates between head coach and GM. And we'll talk about who's the favorite at the moment. And then we'll take a look at who made first team All-Pro in the NFL, and just praise some of the players for their performances this year. So yeah, that's the rundown for the show today. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about the Chiefs and the Lions. Which team is more likely to be upset this upcoming weekend? So actually, both teams will be playing on Saturday. Chiefs will be the first game. They will be taking on the Houston Texans, who they played earlier this year. Won that game at home. And the Lions, they'll be taking on the Commanders, a team they have not faced this year, and that will be the later game. So, who's more likely to be upset? Now, I'll list the reasons as to why they could be upset. So, we'll start off with the Chiefs. So, they're going up against the Texans. They played the Texans the Saturday before Christmas, and it was somewhat a competitive game. I thought the Texans played a decent game. Now, that was the game where Tank Dell suffered that horrible knee injury, and he's likely going to be out all of next year. But I thought the Texans, hung in there. They didn't get blown out. What was the final score of that game? 27-19. C.J. Stroud, he went 23 of 39 for 244 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he did have 2 interceptions. They didn't really run the ball that great, only 84 yards on the ground. Tank Dell was their leading receiver. He had 98 yards. And a touchdown. Nico Collins had 7 for 60. Dalton Schultz had a touchdown. And the Texans' defense had 1 sack of Patrick Mahomes. Now, Patrick Mahomes did take some hits in that game, and, that led to... Well, actually, that was the week before against the Browns, where he suffered the ankle sprain. But, he was good in that game against the Texans. He had the rushing touchdown. He went 28 of 41 for 260 yards and a touchdown. A passing touchdown. And that was when the Chiefs, I think, started to really get into a rhythm offensively. Then the following week against Pittsburgh, Mahomes played well, had over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. But it has been a while. So I would say the layoff could be one reason why the Chiefs could possibly be upset. Is just, maybe players are a little bit rusty. Now, you'll probably, say, come on, really? I'm just throwing that out there. It's been a long time. The last time the starters played was on Christmas. So there's that. But there's also the Texans. They played really well defensively against the Chargers. Now, the Chargers don't have as many playmakers on offense as the Chiefs do. So it's going to be notch above that, maybe a couple of notches above that, of the offense they just went against. But I think if you can get pressure on Mahomes, if you can repeat what you did with Justin Herbert, collapsing the pocket and getting after him, get him off his spot, you got a chance. This Texans defense is pretty good. And Mahomes is going to spread the ball around, so it's not going to be one individual that's going to beat you. Now they're going to key in on Travis Kelce. We know that. Xavier Worthy looked better towards the end of the year, so that's someone to keep an eye on. And then obviously you got the veterans in Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquise Brown and DeAndre Hopkins that you also have to, factor into this offense. The Chiefs could beat you in different ways. And then obviously running the football as well with Isaiah Pacheco, who's a full go for this game on Saturday. So there's that. Also, when it comes to C.J. Stroud, I think, has to use his legs a little bit. We saw that against the Chargers on Saturday. You don't have to be, a pure pocket passer in this game. If you got to get out of the pocket and scramble for some yards, do it. And we'll see what happens. And running the football, Joe Mixon ran the ball effectively against the Chargers in the game on Saturday. Let's see what he does here. But I think for me, the biggest thing is can the Texans get pressure on Mahomes, and can C.J. Stroud limit the turnovers? Because like I said, 2 interceptions in the game against the Chiefs. So we'll see. And then on the other side, you got the Lions and the Commanders. Now, Lions are banged up on defense. We know that. However, the last time we saw them, they played really well against the Vikings, who just won 14 games. And they were able to get after Sam Darnold, put pressure on him, get him off his spot. And then on top of that, they have arguably the best offense in the league. So, for both the Texans and the Commanders, it's going to be a tall task for them to go in to these hostile environments and try to knock off the 1 seeds. But look at Jane Daniels. I mean, his first playoff start, he was poised. He made a lot of great throws in the game on Sunday against the Buccaneers. And, again, this Lions defense is banged up. So can he take advantage of that? And Jane Daniels is more prone to use his legs, so that's something that they're going to have to utilize. Are they going to be able to run the football? The Lions are pretty good at stopping the run. But get the ball to Terry McLaurin. Zach Ertz has had a good year for them. He really didn't do that much in the game against the Buccaneers, so they got to utilize him more. It's really going to come down to, can the Commanders' defense slow down this Lions offense? And I don't think they're going to be able to do that. I think it's really going to have to come down to the Commanders trying to keep up with the Lions, because the Lions put up points in bunches. Now, the Commanders have the potential to do that, but I think that's really how they're going to win this game. Weather's not going to be a factor here. That's the other thing, too. I mean, weather's going to be a factor, in the Chiefs-Texans game because they're playing outdoors. But, the Lions play indoors, so it's going to be a track meet if we go back and forth here. So, getting after Jared Goff. Jared Goff is not, he can move around if he really has to. But, he's going to be thrown from the pocket. So if they can get after Jared Goff, they got a shot. They got a shot and force some turnovers. I mean, they got lucky with the turnover they got on Sunday against the Buccaneers because there was miscommunication on the handoff between Baker Mayfield and Jalen McMillan. But, yeah, if they could put pressure on Jared Goff, maybe they got a shot. But Lions are also getting David Montgomery back for this game. So are they going to be able to slow down the rushing attack of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs? Jahmyr Gibbs, last time we saw him, 4 touchdowns in the game against the Vikings. It's going to be really tough. So who is more likely to be upset? Is it the Chiefs or is it the Lions? I got to be honest. I think it would be the Lions, if anything. I think the Texans, they played a good game against the Chargers on Saturday. But, and you could also say, well, they're playing the Chiefs again. But I just don't see the Chiefs losing this game. I don't see the Lions losing either. But if I had to pick, I would say the Lions. have a chance to be upset more so than the Chiefs just because the Lions are more banged up, particularly on defense. Even though the defense did play well against the Vikings in the final week of the regular season, I just don't see the Chiefs losing in the divisional round. They have not lost in the divisional round in the Patrick Mahomes era. They just haven't. I went over the numbers yesterday. Mahomes has never lost in the divisional round. He's 6-0. He's not thrown an interception in the divisional round. He's got a passer rating of 115.8, 70.4 completion percentage, 16 total touchdowns and no picks. I mean, the numbers are staggering. And I just think that's going to continue. I really do. Now, the Texans, they have never won a road playoff game. They were 0-5 all time. I just don't think this is going to be the year that it's going to happen. I don't. I think the Texans will be going home after Saturday. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I just think the Commanders have the better shot, in my opinion. Especially, they're also playing indoors, like I said. And Jane Daniels is playing some good football right now. So I would lean towards the Lions being the team or being the 1 seed. That could be upset more so than the Chiefs. But we'll see what happens. I think both games can be good. I think Commanders-Lions is going to be a pretty good game. So we'll see what happens there. But let me know what you guys think. Which team has the greater chance of being upset? Let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our first break of the show. And then when we come back, we'll talk about something that's kind of been floated around in the media the last couple of days. So I thought I would discuss it. And that is, would a potential Aaron Rodgers, Mike McCarthy work? Could it happen? What are my thoughts on it? With Mike McCarthy being let go by the Cowboys, or, well, really them parting ways. They didn't give him a new contract. He's out there, and then, we'll see what happens with Aaron Rodgers. Is he going to make a decision on whether he's going to come back, or is he going to retire? We'll get into all that when we come back from our first break of the show. So with that being said, make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit. A stupid myth, you choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the second part of the show, we're going to talk about if a Aaron Rodgers, Mike McCarthy reunion could work. So that's something that's kind of been floated around in the media the last, few days because of Mike McCarthy and the Cowboys parting ways. And could it work? And the last time we saw Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy together with the Packers, it didn't end well because Mike McCarthy got let go with a few games remaining in the 2018 season. I think Joe Philbin, he became the interim head coach to finish out the year. I feel like they should have let McCarthy finish out the year. I don't know, but that happened years ago, and there were a lot of reports that came out about how the relationship just was deteriorating. And they were kind of just done with each other. Rodgers would audible out of plays that McCarthy would call, and it did not end well. It didn't end well. However, as years have passed, we've heard them say things in a positive light about each other. And, Rodgers has talked about how grateful he is for McCarthy and everything he did for him. And I think it's easier to say that now because you've been apart. It's one of those relationships that it just got stale. And they needed to go in different directions. Now, like I said, I would have liked to maybe have seen McCarthy just finish out the year in 2018 instead of them letting him go. I mean, I think he earned the right to finish out the season for the Packers, but that happened years ago. But yeah, obviously now you spend some time apart, and Rodgers said this in some of the stuff I was reading. You kind of look back on the good times that they had, and they did have a lot of success together, although there was a lot more to be desired. I've said that before. Rodgers' career, we're going to look back on it. You would have liked to have seen him get to at least one more Super Bowl and not just win the one against the Steelers all those years ago. I mean, look, he's still a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. But, I would have loved to have seen him get to another Super Bowl and win it. But yeah, they were very successful together. They were in the playoffs almost every year. They got to NFC Championship games. They did win a Super Bowl together. Rodgers won 2 MVPs with McCarthy as the head coach. They experienced a lot together. Now, could that work in 2025? It's got to be the right situation. And I think they both would have to be willing to do that. Well, first of all, we got to see if Rodgers wants to play first. That's the most important thing. If Rodgers doesn't want to play next year, well, then this conversation really goes out the window. But if Rodgers wants to play, could it work? Well, McCarthy is set to interview with the Bears. The Bears wanted to interview him, and you also had the Saints as well that want to interview him. Now, if he goes to the Bears, well, there's no potential of a reunion there unless Rodgers wants to be Caleb Williams' backup. And the other thing, too, is does he want to be on the Bears? No, that's not happening. The Saints is interesting. That could be a situation that could work depending on what they do with Derek Carr, because I think the Saints want Derek Carr to take a pay cut, and he doesn't want to take a pay cut. So we'll see if the Saints maybe move off of Derek Carr. But the Saints cap situation has just been one of the worst for years now, and I don't think bringing in Aaron Rodgers would help that very much. I mean, could they potentially bring him in to be on the Jets if he were to come back? If McCarthy interviews for the job? I guess so, if Rodgers does stay. Because I would love to know what the Jets ask their candidates. Do you want Aaron Rodgers back or not? Is that part of the interview process? And we'll get into their head coach search later in the show, because it seems like they could have a head coach within the next week or so. But we'll get into that. And I don't think it's going to be McCarthy. Also because McCarthy just parted ways with the Cowboys, and I don't think the Jets have scheduled an interview with him. Now, I thought it was funny because on the Pat McAfee show, they said McCarthy, he's from Pittsburgh. He goes back to Pittsburgh. He becomes the offensive coordinator for the Steelers. You bring in Aaron Rodgers. You bring in Devontae Adams. Aaron Jones is also a free agent. You bring him in. And there you go. That's how they reunite, which is not going to happen. But I just thought it was funny that they brought that up. Yeah, I don't know. Would it work? Again, it's up to them. Would they be willing to reunite and try to light that flame again? Because again, it didn't end right. It didn't end on the best of terms. I mean, look, you could also point to, even though they won a lot more than these two guys did, and that's Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Their relationship got stale too. Now, obviously, things are different now. Things have kind of been patched up, and Brady is supposedly trying to recruit him to be the head coach of the Raiders. But it's again that it's different now because Tom Brady is an owner of a team trying to recruit Belichick to coach that team. Brady's not playing for him. So, yeah, I mean, is an Aaron Rodgers Mike McCarthy reunion going to happen? Probably not. But it did happen in 2018. It was a long time ago. If they were willing to at least run it back one more time and see what happens, maybe. But it depends on where. What teams want Aaron Rodgers? I think the Steelers could be a potential fit just because it's not guaranteed that they would bring back Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. But Mike McCarthy wants to be a head coach. He doesn't want to be a coordinator. So, if Rodgers just went to Pittsburgh without McCarthy, that's a fit for Rodgers. But it would really have to be who needs a new head coach and who needs a quarterback. Now, the Saints come to mind when I brought them up before because McCarthy's going to interview with them and maybe they move off of Derek Carr. But I don't know. You move off of Derek Carr and you bring in an older quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But I think, if Rodgers does come back and plays, it's not going to be with Mike McCarthy. McCarthy's going to coach somewhere else. It's going to be interesting to see where he ends up, what the Cowboys end up doing. Because we did talk about who they could potentially bring in. Kellen Moore's the favorite. I did bring that up on the show, on my show, but we also did bring it up in our production meeting as well. So, we'll wait and see. Still the offensive coordinator for the Eagles. And then at the end of the year, we'll see if they bring him back. But, yeah, McCarthy's going to have options. And so far, he's got a couple of teams that want to bring him in. And look, I think he could still coach. I don't look at him in the same light that I did, 10 years ago, just because of everything that's happened over the years and just how his tenure in Green Bay ended. But, the Cowboys were basically in the playoffs every single year with him as the head coach. Now, they didn't really win anything. They did win a playoff game, but, they didn't really go any further than the second round. So, that's kind of what you're going to get. Is a head coach that, yeah, you'll have a good regular season, but you get to the playoffs and you can't really get it done. But it also depends on where he ends up. I mean, the Bears, the ceiling is high for them. They got young talent on that team. So if he went there, and he's an experienced head coach, listen, he helped develop Aaron Rodgers. Maybe he can help develop Caleb Williams. So, we'll see. I mean, Caleb Williams, you see the talent. You just need the right coach there. And I don't think McCarthy would be a huge negative for Caleb Williams. Because McCarthy is an NFL head coach. He's an experienced head coach that you'd be bringing in. And they got talent there. And, when I was, of course, reading up on, Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy, obviously the other thing, too, is that everybody likes to point out as to why maybe they weren't on the best of terms is, McCarthy was with the 49ers when they passed up on him in the 2005 draft to take Alex Smith. And then Rodgers fell to the Packers. And then McCarthy went to the Packers and, Rodgers, they like to talk about how he held a grudge against him. But, McCarthy helped with Aaron Rodgers' development. It wasn't entirely on McCarthy, but he helped to an extent. And I think, with Dak Prescott, Dak had good years with McCarthy as the head coach. So, if he ends up with the Bears, let's say, I think it helps Caleb Williams. It does. So, we'll have to wait and see. But, yeah, I think the stuff I brought up with Rodgers getting passed up on in the draft with McCarthy with the Niners, that's water under the bridge. I just think they appreciate the past, but I don't think they're looking to reunite. Now, if it's on the table, maybe they take a chance. But it's not going to happen. And I don't know if it would work. Because maybe the same problems that they had towards the end of Green Bay, the time in Green Bay, they could flare up again. But who knows? But let me know what you guys think. Is it a realistic possibility we could see an Aaron Rodgers, Mike McCarthy reunion? The biggest thing is, does Aaron Rodgers want to play? And we got to find out about that. And I'm sure we'll get an answer in the coming weeks. I would hope. So before we go to break, just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the super chat button in the chat. Make sure to hit on that if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have during the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contributions you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCpodcast.net. That is GSMCpodcast.net. So, when we come back from our next break, we will talk about how it wasn't the best year for the highest paid QBs in the NFL. We'll talk about what happened during the year for these quarterbacks. So make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to now talk about how it just was not a good year for the top highest paid QBs in the NFL. If you want to look at the top 5, nobody's winning a playoff game this year. The only quarterback out of the top 5 that made the playoffs was Jordan Love, and he, of course, got knocked out on Sunday against the Eagles. But the top 5 is Dak Prescott, who is making $60 million a year. Joe Burrow is making $55 million a year. Jordan Love is also making $55 million a year. Trevor Lawrence is also making $55 million a year. And Tua Tagovailoa is making $53.1 million. Now, out of these quarterbacks, the quarterback that had the best year was Joe Burrow. And he missed the playoffs. Now, it's not all Burrow's fault. We know this. A lot of that had to do with the defense. Now, he also had turnovers in, big moments in certain games that kind of decided the outcome. Like, against the Chiefs, we could talk about that pass interference call, but he also fumbled the ball that led to a defensive touchdown by the Chiefs. So that was costly. It's just, that's how slim the margin of error was for the Bengals this year. But, again, if we look at the Bengals season, the reason they didn't make the playoffs was because of that defense. Burrow was good from start to finish. I mean, I guess, the Patriots game wasn't good, but pretty much the whole year he was great. But for the other guys, I mean, Dak Prescott, was not playing the best before he got hurt, because he ended up missing, a large chunk of the year due to the hamstring injury that he suffered. He had 11 touchdowns to 8 picks before he got hurt, barely under 2,000 yards passing. Then you had Jordan Love, who just got eliminated from the playoffs Trevor Lawrence, he finished the year hurt. He got banged up this year. Tua with the concussions, and then he missed, the last couple of games with a hip injury, and the Dolphins ended up missing the playoffs. It was not a great year. The injuries, and Jordan Love was also hurt. The only quarterback that really was not hurt out of these 5 is Joe Burrow, but, at times we would see him flexing his wrist, because still feeling that injury, still trying to get over it, but, he had an incredible year. So he's fine, and next year he's going to be even better, you would imagine, being another year removed. So 4 out of the 5 guys spent some time on the sidelines, missing games, and only 1 out of the 5 made the playoffs. Now, I'm not trying to sit here and say, well, you shouldn't pay your quarterback, but it's just, it does kind of put into perspective, though, how it is getting a little crazy, the amount of money that quarterbacks are making. Because you look at Patrick Mahomes and his contract, he's making $45 million a year. Dak Prescott's making $60 million a year. And total guaranteed money for Dak Prescott is $231 million. And Patrick Mahomes, it's only $141. It's almost $100 million less in total guaranteed money. And, you see Kirk Cousins is making more money than Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson per year. Deshaun's making $46 million. Kyler Murray's making $46.1 million. His guaranteed money is more than Mahomes. But, you have Jalen Hurts, you got Lamar Jackson. Those 2 guys are still in the playoffs. Jalen Hurts is making $51 million a year. Lamar's making $52 million per year. And, if you go down to the top 7, so you would add Jared Goff and Justin Herbert to the conversation. Now, Jared Goff is still in the playoffs. Justin Herbert got knocked out. So, hopefully, Jared Goff, could keep it going. At least in the top 7, you got one of the QBs still in it. But, yeah, it's just been a disappointment for the highest paid QBs in the league. And it's only going to go up. Right? Now, when I heard that, Dak Prescott could get paid $60 million a year, I just think it's a little ridiculous. Because I don't think any quarterback is worth that kind of money. And especially, a guy that's not the top quarterback at his position. But that's just what the market is. And, he got his money, and he deserves to get paid. But, now, first year, with that money, he got hurt. And same thing with some of the other guys. Tua, Trevor Lawrence. They did not finish the year playing. Jordan Love, was able to come back after he suffered an injury at the beginning of the year. But, some would say he regressed. Now, I think he's still going to be a good quarterback. He was good last year. And this was only his second full year starting. Let's see what year 3 brings. But, yeah, it's just, if you were a franchise that put a heavy investment into your quarterback, after the first year, you're not happy. Now, when you extend it to the top 7, you got Jared Goff and Justin Herbert. Yeah, Justin Herbert was not good in the playoff game against the Texans. But he put together a solid year. He had 3 interceptions the whole year. He pretty much stayed relatively healthy. He was a little banged up earlier in the season, but, he got healthier, and he looked better as the season went on. And, if it wasn't for Justin Herbert, Chargers aren't getting into the playoffs. They also had a very good defense this year, and Jim Harbaugh is the coach. But, if you don't have Justin Herbert, you're not making the playoffs. You're just not. So, you want to see better results next year, and I think we will. Because now it's another year with Harbaugh, putting the roster in his image. And, you add more offensive talent to that team, they're going to be dangerous. I do believe that. And then for Jared Goff, we'll see what happens on Saturday. And Jared Goff put together another solid year. But you know what? Out of the quarterbacks, I mean, Joe Burrow's been to a Super Bowl. But when you look at Dak Prescott, Jordan Love, Trevor Lawrence, Tua, Justin Herbert, in this top 7, Jared Goff, he's been to a Super Bowl. He's been to 2 NFC Championship games, one last year. And now they've won 15 games. I mean, he's a big reason why, the Lions have been successful in recent years. And it's amazing his story. And we've talked about it several times on the show. The Rams, they essentially gave up on him. Went to the Lions, and it looked like he was going to be a backup the rest of his career. Like he was going to be a bridge guy, and then the Lions were going to move off of him at some point. But he has become their franchise quarterback, and he's loved there. And he's played really well, and we'll see if the Lions can get it done this year. But he is a big reason why the Lions are where they're at right now. Along with just, the culture that Dan Campbell has built over there. And, they got a chance to rewrite the wrong from last year because they came up short. Can they break through and get to the Super Bowl? We're going to find out. They got to win 2 more games, and then they're there. But, just was not the prettiest year for some of these quarterbacks, though. It's just amazing how, the top 5, 4 out of the 5 missed the playoffs. And, if you combine all 5 of them, no playoff wins. They got the same amount of playoff wins as me and you from this year. Now, can they bounce back? Well, I think if Dak stays healthy, Cowboys bring in the right head coach. The Cowboys, they still have a lot of talent on this team. And, I think you need to improve the running game and, maybe get another weapon. And I think offensively they'll be good. And I think Dak, he usually puts up solid numbers in the regular season. I think he'll have a good year next year. Joe Burrow, we'll see what happens with T. Higgins, but, you still got Jamar Chase. Burrow's going to be good next year. We'll see what the Packers do in the offseason. We talked about what they should do. Offense, got to address that. The Dolphins will be interesting because Tyreek Hill, might want out. So are they going to have him next year? Can Tua stay healthy? We saw last year when Tua stayed healthy. Well, I guess now 2 years ago. When Tua stayed healthy, he led the league in passing yards. Now, a lot of that had to do with Tyreek Hill and, what he was able to do. But put together a solid year. So, we'll see if Tua could bounce back and stay on the field. Trevor Lawrence, he's been a disappointment. Last couple of years, he's been banged up. Jaguars are going to be looking for a new head coach. And we'll see, who they end up bringing in. You got a studded wide receiver in Brian Thomas Jr. Last year, Tank Bigsby, he showed you something. I don't know, are they going to move off of Travis Etienne? Wait and see on that. You still got Evan Ingram at tight end. Christian Kirk, it was banged up last year. So, it's kind of weird saying last year, even though we're still in the same season, but we're now into the new year. But I don't know, because that's what analysts start doing. They start saying, well, he was good last year. Well, technically, yeah, it was last year, but I don't know. Trevor Lawrence is the one. Like, at least when you look at the top 5, Tua last year, 2 years ago, led the league in passing yards. I mean, the playoffs was a disappointment. He's got to make a difference in the playoffs. Jordan Love, won a playoff game last year. Was impressive down the stretch. Was good this year, but, again, a little bit of regression. Joe Burrow, even in the year he missed the playoffs, he had one of his best seasons. And Dak Prescott, he got hurt, but the Cowboys pretty much make the playoffs every year. Trevor Lawrence did make the playoffs a couple years ago, but 2 years ago, you had the collapse, and, last year, again, banged up, and the team just was not good. These guys have, in one way or another, have made their mark. I feel like Trevor Lawrence has not made his mark yet, other than 2 years ago. But he does have a playoff win. So, I don't know. We got to see. I think it's just because the last couple of years he's been banged up. Tua at least has put together a healthy season more recently than Trevor Lawrence when you're combining the last 2 years. But, next year's a big year for some of these guys, and hopefully, they can deliver. But I just thought it was just something interesting to bring up that, the top 5 highest paid QBs in terms of, per year, no playoff wins. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think, though, about this. Who do you think has the best chance to bounce back? I know Joe Burrow had a great year, but, in terms of, Dak Prescott, the Dak Prescotts, the Trevor Lawrences, the Tuas, the Jordan Loves, who has the best chance to bounce back next year? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. So, we are going to take our next break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about the Jets and their search for a new head coach. Where are we at currently in that process? So make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we're going to talk about the Jets head coach search and where they're kind of at in that process. Nate in the chat says, I agree. If you're still there, can you clarify on what you agree on? If it's, I guess, what I was talking about at the end, well, in the last segment, of course, with the highest paid QBs and how, it was kind of a disappointing year collectively for them. But to talk about the Jets, so, they're kind of really taking their time with this. They're being, I guess you want to say, thorough with the process because they're also looking for a new GM too. And they have interviewed a lot, or set to interview a lot of candidates. Now, when it comes to who they've interviewed, so they did interview Mike Vrabel, but of course he's going to the Patriots. But you had Ron Rivera, Rex Ryan, Matt Nagy, Steve Spagnuolo, Aaron Glenn, Brian Griese. They requested to interview him. Vance Joseph, Josh McCown, Brian Flores, Bobby Slowick, Arthur Smith, Darren Rizzi. Those are all requested, and Joe Brady as well. Jeff Ulbrich also gave him another interview, but it's not going to be him. It's a lot of candidates. And on top of that, like I said, they're looking for a GM as well. Rex Ryan, it seems like he is going to be out of it, which, look, from a non-Jet fan perspective, I would have loved to have seen Rex come back and see him be successful. If Rex was to come back, I would want him to do well. I would not want it to flop. I would want him to come back and try to turn this thing around. But it's not going to happen. He's been out of the game for too long, and this is really the only job that he wants, and it's not going to happen. But for some of the other candidates, you got Ron Rivera, who's been out of the league for a couple of years now. Actually, no. When was the last time he coached? Was it last year? Because he was with the Commanders most recently. I think the last time he coached... Oh, yeah, no, it was last year. Yeah, because they went 4-13. It was last year. Or 2 years ago now. But yeah, it was with Carolina for most of his coaching career, and then, from 2020 to 2023, he was the coach of the Washington football team, and then the Commanders. But yeah, it never finished with a winning record. Did, win a division That was in 2020. That was when the NFC East was the NFC least. The Commanders the football team went 7-9. Then the following year went 7-10. Then went 8-1 in 2022, and then last year 4-13. Yeah, so not great. So I don't think the Jets should bring in Ron Rivera. Matt Nagy, offensive coordinator for the Chiefs, made the playoffs with the Bears, has a winning record. I don't think so. Spags, I think he's a good defensive coordinator. I don't know about a head coach. Aaron Glenn and Brian Flores. It seems like those are the two guys that are the favorites to get the job. Now, Aaron Glenn, supposedly, the Jets are his top pick. And he is, of course, the defensive coordinator for the Lions. And, I did watch a little snippet of him talk about how, he is a defensive coordinator, but, he also talks to the offense. Like, if he were to get a head coaching job, he would talk to both. Obviously, defense is a specialty, but you also want to have input on the offense as well. I did like what he said in that little clip there that I saw last night. But ultimately, it's going to come down to, if you get the job, are you able to do it? Are you able to perform that? Because for me, I feel like the Jets need to go with offense. Now, it's kind of funny, though, because if you go back and, from Rex Ryan, they went from Rex Ryan, defensive guy, to Todd Bowles, who was a defensive guy. Then Adam Gase was an offensive guy, and then they went back to defense with Robert Saleh. And it just didn't work out. It's really all about, when you look at that, though, like again, I think the Jets should go with an offensive guy, but if you bring in the right guy, no matter what background they are, then it doesn't matter at the end of the day. And Aaron Glenn is coming from the Lions. If it is him, he's coming from the Lions, and they have really built a culture there, and he could bring some of that culture to the Jets. Now, some Jet fans talk about the culture changing the karma. Maybe he changes the karma. But Aaron Rodgers wasn't able to do it. But there was more than just, it had more than just karma when it came to the Jets. It also had to do with the level of play, and it wasn't up to par. Even though I don't think Rodgers was as bad as people, say he was. I think, when he was healthy, he played well. But yeah, it wasn't what the Jets wanted. But yeah, can Aaron Glenn, if it is him, can he come over and finally, point the Jets in the right direction? Now, Brian Flores is also another option as well. And, spent some time with Pittsburgh, then was with the Vikings after, his time in Miami. And, probably learned a lot from that experience. And, I think at some point he will get, an opportunity to coach another team again. I think of the candidates that I just listed off, those are the top two. But it looks like maybe Aaron Glenn could be the guy that the Jets end up going with, because he wants to go there, and he has a connection with them. So I guess right now you would lean towards Aaron Glenn. So this is, I think I have the quote here. Yeah, so this is from the Daily News, an article here, if I can, but now I got all this stuff popping up because I wanted to read the quote that he said. So he basically said, I'm a coach, I just coach defense, is what I was getting at. But now I don't know where the quote is. And again, this thing popped up in the article that I'm looking at, so now I can't even read what it said. But yeah, he said, I'm a coach, I just happen to be on defense. I understand the offense just as well as a number of people. So, I mean, yeah, it's, you could say, well, you got to go out there and prove it, like I said. But, that's what some people point to with Robert Saleh, is just he didn't really get offense. So if Aaron Glenn is right with what he's saying, then, he could be an upgrade over Robert Saleh. And I did like the Saleh hire when it first happened because, of the energy that I thought he was going to bring to the Jets. Because, when he was with the 49ers, I mean, he's, going crazy on the sidelines when he was the defensive coordinator. And we didn't get that version of Robert Saleh with the Jets, I feel like. And again, I have a lot of Jet fans that are friends and family. So, it would be nice. Well, I want both New York teams to be successful, because then we're all happy. But, they, like at least with the Giants won a playoff game, a few years ago. The Jets, last time they won, I was in elementary school. So they're hoping that this could be the right guy. If it is, that's why they're going through this whole process of interviewing as many people as they can. So if it is Aaron Glenn, we'll see. We'll see what he brings to the table as a head coach. But you're bringing someone over from a culture that is really good. You're bringing some of that Dan Campbell magic over to the Jets. And we'll see if it works. But the Jets, it's a lot more than just a head coach. You got the GM you're looking for. We got to see who's playing quarterback next year. You have a defense that underperformed. There's a lot that the Jets have to work on. And the other thing, too, is, you got an owner that has had a lot of input, maybe a little too much input. Might have to take a step back a little bit. If you bring in an Aaron Glenn, and we'll see what they do with GM, let them figure it out, and you just take a back seat. But that's easier said than done. So, yeah, no, it's I'm curious to see how it all plays out. There's still time. We'll have to wait and see the next domino that falls in the head coaching carousel. But the Jets have been, like I said, they've been thorough, maybe a little too thorough with the amount of people that they've interviewed. But they got to get this right. They are a team that has to get it right. If the Giants are going through the same process, I would say the same thing, because they've been going through similar things for a while now. Even though, like I just said, the Giants made the playoffs more recently than the Jets, but still, you got to get it right, because they have been going through head coaches and GMs like crazy. From Rex and Tannenbaum to Idzik and Todd Bowles, and, well, actually, I forgot Mike Maccagnan. Mike Maccagnan to Joe Douglas, and then, you had Robert Saleh and Adam Gase. It's not good. It needs to come to an end. That trend needs to come to an end. You get the right head coach, you get the right GM, and you go from there. Hopefully, if you're a Jet fan. But we'll see what happens. But right now, it looks like we're leaning towards Aaron Glenn being named the coach. It's him and Brian Flores. Now, Brian Flores has head coaching experience, so I guess maybe you lean towards him. But, if Aaron Glenn really wants the job and they like him, then he's their guy. So I'll have to wait and see on that. But let me know what you guys think about the Jets and their head coaching search. Who do you think eventually ends up with the job? Let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our final break of the show now. And then when we come back, we will talk about who made First Team All-Pro. We'll kind of break down First Team All-Pro as well as who made Second Team All-Pro as well. And if maybe, one of the Second Team All-Pros should have been First Team. We'll get into all that when we come back from our final break of the show. So, for one final time today, make sure to stick around. And we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're going to take a look at who made first-team All-Pro in the NFL. We'll also take a look at who made second-team All-Pro as well. So starting off with offense, Lamar Jackson at quarterback. I mean, he's had a great year. Him and Josh Allen are the co-favorites for MVP. Josh Allen made second-team All-Pro. And, I mean, if you look at the numbers of both quarterbacks. So Lamar Jackson, he has, well, that's the postseason. He has 41 touchdowns to 4 picks. And he has over 4,000 yards passing. He has 4 rushing touchdowns. He has 1,900. That's Derrick Henry. He has 915 rushing yards as well on the season. And then you look at Josh Allen on the year, and Josh Allen has 28 touchdowns to 6 picks. He has 3,700 yards passing, and he has 12 rushing touchdowns. Now, you look at that and you say, well, I mean, Lamar beats him in the passing categories. Now, the 12 rushing touchdowns, and it's not like, it's a tush push with Josh Allen. Like, Josh Allen is, I mean, that signature play against the Chiefs on that 4th down, it's touchdown runs like that. I mean, some of them, of course, are, QB sneaks, but, you also have runs like that as well. Honestly, yeah. I mean, I guess it's going to be very close. But sometimes, like, you'll have a scenario where, one quarterback will get first-team All-Pro and the other will get the MVP. I don't know. We'll see. But, yeah, Lamar has been, this year Lamar has been better than last year, and last year he won the MVP. But, you know what? If Lamar ends up winning MVP, I'm not going to be upset about it because I think either of these guys deserves it. They have both been, Lamar has 45 total touchdowns, and Josh Allen has, including the rushing touchdowns, so he has 28. And then combined with the 12 rushing touchdowns, he has 40. 40 total touchdowns on the year. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see who wins MVP. But it is, I guess when you look at the overall numbers, you would probably lean towards Lamar. But, we'll see. We'll see what the voters decide. And then let's move on now to running back, since we spent a lot of time at quarterback here. Saquon Barkley. There's no surprise there. He has been unbelievable this year. Derrick Henry has also been great, but Saquon has had the better year. If it wasn't for Saquon, Derrick Henry would be first-team All-Pro as well. But Saquon, both these running backs, in their new homes, they've delivered. They've made a difference. I think, in terms of who's been more impactful, I would say Saquon Barkley, because I don't know, like, Jalen Hurts has not played like an MVP this year. He's been solid, but, not great. Who knows what would happen with the Eagles offensively if they didn't have Saquon? They probably would still be running the ball effectively, but Saquon is a difference maker. And Derrick Henry is a difference maker too. But I feel like even without Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, would still be putting up good numbers, and, the Ravens would still be in a good spot. But they're in a better spot with Derrick Henry. I think Saquon has been more impactful for the Eagles than Derrick Henry has for the Ravens. But again, they both, it's super close, but Saquon's had the better year. Patrick Ricard, fullback, first-team All-Pro. Kyle Juszczyk for the Niners, he made second-team All-Pro. Brock Bowers for the Raiders made it as the tight end for first-team All-Pro. He was great his rookie season. He was one of the lone bright spots for the Raiders, and he's one of the cornerstone pieces that they're going to build on. So hopefully, they could surround him with more talent. They get the right quarterback in place. We'll see. The Raiders don't have a top 3 pick, so it's going to be interesting what they decide to do at the quarterback position for next year. I think Aiden O'Connell is okay, but he's not a franchise quarterback. But yeah, Brock Bowers, unbelievable rookie season for him. And then George Kittle made it for the second team All-Pro. He was solid as well. And then the top three receivers, first team All-Pros, I mean, no surprise here. Jamar Chase won the Triple Crown this year. Justin Jefferson and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Those are the top receivers in the game right now. One of them is still in the playoffs. And one of them didn't make it. And, yeah, Jamar Chase, I mean, the Bengals, their offense was historic this year. And they didn't make the playoffs. It's a shame. But, I mean, these three guys deserve it. They're the top receivers in the game. And then in terms of the offensive line, you had two Kansas City Chiefs. You had Joe Thuney, left guard, and Creed Humphrey at center. Tristan Wirfs from Tampa Bay. Penei Sewell from Detroit. You also have the right guard from Denver. Quinn Meinerz. I think that's how you pronounce it. So he also made it. So, hey, Denver Bronco making it first team All-Pro. That's not bad. And then defensively, you got Myles Garrett and Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson, I think, was the sack leader this year. So, yeah, you had the Triple Crown. You had Joe Burrow with the season he had, and you also had the NFL sack leader in Trey Hendrickson, and they didn't make the playoffs. But, yeah, I mean, again, it's the defense. The defense was a problem. That was the main problem. You also had Cam Hayward and Chris Jones. Zach Bond, who we saw intercept Jordan Love on Sunday. Fred Warner from San Francisco. Roquan Smith from the Ravens. You had Patrick Surtain, who had an unbelievable year, along with Derek Stingley as well. Marlon Humphrey. Safeties, you had Kirby Joseph and Xavier McKinney. I mean, what an acquisition for the Packers, getting him from the Giants, which the Giants didn't let him go, but that's what they decided to do. And then you look at special teams, Chris Boswell. I mean, he was great too. He did not miss really at all this year. If it wasn't for him, Brandon Aubrey would have been first team All-Pro. He was second team All-Pro. But yeah, Boswell had a great year. You had Jack Fox, the punter for the Lions. Kevontae Turpin for Dallas. He was good. Marvin Mims. Brendan Schooler for the Patriots. And then you also had the long snapper of the Vikings, Andrew DePola. And then we go to second team All-Pro. We talked about Josh Allen. We talked about Derrick Henry, Kyle Juszczyk, George Kittle, Terry McLaurin. I mean, what a year he had with Jaden Daniels, and they're still not done yet. CeeDee Lamb, he finished the year hurt, but hopefully next year we could see more of the CeeDee Lamb. I mean, he had good games this year, or last year, but I want to see the CeeDee Lamb from 2023 because he had an unbelievable year then. And also having Dak Prescott fully healthy too. A.J. Brown also made it as well. I feel like, Brown was good. Well, what were A.J. Brown's stats this year in the regular season? Because he also missed some games. A.J. Brown, nope, that's the postseason, because the postseason always pops up now. A.J. Brown, 67 receptions, 1,079 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns. Yeah, he had a good year. So, yeah, those are the top receivers there. Then you had Jordan Mailata from Philly, Quinn Nelson from the Colts, Frank Ragnow from the Lions, Chris Lindstrom from Atlanta, Lane Johnson from Philadelphia. So, the two tackles from Philly, no surprise there. They have one of the best offensive lines in the league. And then we go to defense, T.J. Watt, Nick Bonito, Andrew Van Ginkel. They all made it for the edge rushers. Then you had Zach Allen from Denver, who's a monster. Jalen Carter as well, who's really developed for the Eagles on the interior there. A couple of Washington linebackers, Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner. They've been key pieces on that defense. And look, that was one of the reasons why I just didn't think the Commanders were going to be good. I just thought the defense was going to continue to be bad. But no, the defense, obviously he's not spectacular, but definitely better than what I would have expected. But also Jaden Daniels was great too. That was a big part of it. Corners, you had Trent McDuffie from Kansas City and Christian Gonzalez from New England. Good to see him make it because, his rookie season, got hurt. He's a good player for them. You also had Derwin James from the Chargers, Kyle Hamilton from the Ravens, and then Budda Baker from the Cardinals. And I did mention Brandon Aubrey, so he made it. Logan Cook from Jacksonville made it. So that's a bright spot there for the Jaguars. Their punter made second-team All-Pro. You had Eckler as a kick returner this year. Khalif Raymond as a punt returner from the Lions. Eckler with the Commanders, of course. So, yeah, some Commanders representation here. And then J.T. Gray, special teamer from the Saints. And also Jacksonville's long snapper as well. So, yeah, that's what we got here for All Pros. I don't really have any major complaints with anything. Now we'll see what happens when we get to the NFL honors and who wins those awards. That'll be interesting. Right now, I mean, I've been of the mindset that Josh Allen's going to win MVP, but it's just when you look at the overall numbers, it's tough to argue that it shouldn't be Lamar Jackson. But we'll see. Offensive Player of the Year, I think, is going to be Saquon Barkley. But we'll see what happens. We got a few weeks before the NFL honors, so I think it's the Saturday before the Super Bowl. Actually, no. I forget when it usually is. Isn't it during the week? It's like on a Thursday. It's on a Thursday, maybe. I don't know. Well, when it comes up, we'll predict who wins what award, and we'll see how accurate we are. But that is pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows as well. Tomorrow, straight previews. We are previewing every single game between Saturday and Sunday, and also we will preview the national championship game as well between Notre Dame and Ohio State, because I will not be doing a show on Monday. So make sure to tune in for that tomorrow. Make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to this video, and I'll repost each individual segment on both YouTube channels. So if you missed anything, you don't have to go through the whole live stream. So yeah, until next time, I am Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit.